But to go back to the show at hand, I think it was just the idea that he chose Goofy as the storyline to address fatherhood
Hmm.
as he grew into being a father, and to address systemic factors, like all these different factors as to what Goofy was going through that put Goofy in that situation that Goofy was in. That's crazy to me.
That's the stuff that connected to me, that whole thing with his son and them working their way to have an understanding. But
I like that story that they had told, like on his first day when he gets in and he's like, he's showing Mickey like kind of like abusing Pluto, so to speak. And it's like, why is Goofy allowing, Mickey to do this to Pluto if they're both dogs? If these are his people, why would he allow this? That in itself is hilarious, but also brilliant enough to be like, that's him sounding the call of like, I'm gonna do something different. But still, that whole logic is like, I've always struggled with what cartoon characters are,
yeah,
because I always thought Goofy was a cow for a long time.
but yeah, they did have a cow character back in the day. It's amazing that Donald Glover took an animated cartoon that's loved by Black folks and many others, I'm sure, and kind of built a whole conspiracy theory around it. So it's something that's beloved that we care about. I would never have thought that I would hear something about like a movie like this, like the Goofy movie, in this context. Like it gives it a whole other life as well,
Yeah, it's black now. That was almost like we've said it jokingly or
Yeah.
whatever, and a few people have their theories, but
He built an
I feel like
episode, the lore.
yeah, I feel like if you show people that who never watched, if you just fooled around and caught that on television and didn't know it was Atlanta, you would think that's real, man.
Right.
Like you would literally think all of that's real.
Right.
That's how good of a like kudos to like just the post-production team.
Mm-hmm.
Made videos look like they were shot on VHS.
And that's a lot coming from you, because you do documentaries and stuff like that. So you're looking at it at a whole different level, and you know what cues to look for. So if you're saying that, that means a lot.
I think some of that may have been actually recorded on tape. Now I know they don't have to; it can all be done in post, but not everything can be done in post like you think.
Right.
And so, not everything can. But it was shot in a way that made you think that like this stuff was all on tapes, like that they really did have all of this.
So what did you think about the part where he kind of lost his mind because they, like I said, they had removed him, and I thought it was cool too that they offered him like $75 million or something to leave, and he wouldn't take the money. He didn't want to take the money.
The cousin thought that it was 75,000.
Right, it was 75 million because they wanted to correct that problem. And it's funny because I even liked how the white dude was like, we would have handled it a different kind of way, but we had so many eyes on us because we had just had success with Little Mermaid that we couldn't really do the way they wanted to do it. So I thought it was kind of interesting. They had to ride it out and didn't want no extra mess going on because of the success that they had. So it's almost like, it's not because they try and do the right thing. It's because they don't want to look bad. It's the PR part about it. But they invited him back for a screening of the movie, and they have scenes like, I guess he's supposed to find like the chair of
Huey Newton. They were supposed to find Huey Newton. Which, who thinks of that?
That's great. So that was going to be their journey to find that, because he wanted to share that with his son. And then the cut scene that, where he gets pulled over by the quote unquote pig, the cop that's actually a pig.
It was supposed, yeah.
Like, and they're supposed to get shot.
God, like.
And then the white animator was like, why would you do that?
That's when you like that. If they were just the concept that someone drew the pig with a gun, like, so someone really had to actually draw all, which is the most hilarious thing to be like. Can you picture being Donald Glover or Steven Glover trying to pitch this to the people at FX and the people at Disney? Because they had to go get Disney animation people to go, because these characters, this was Goofy.
Yes.
Like this, like an offshoot. Like they may have done a few things different, to throw it off, but nothing to the naked eye that you would see.
Yeah.
They had to go draw that. Like, they had to tell them, like, yeah, so this next little piece.
Right, because even the sketch, because even how the sketches are sometimes a little bit more detailed than the actual animation. So they had Goofy with little extra hairs and stuff. So you could tell that's how it looks, because you would sketch it out a little bit different than how the animation would be, because they would have to clean it up some. So even that, they even had the blue pencil that you draw underneath before you draw the pencils, so when you make a copy of it, you can't see the blue pencil. And so it was just interesting that they did all that, and there'd be cut scenes and storyboards that's done for movies that they don't necessarily use. And so for them wanting, so he's on this whole other thing, and his co-workers and animators that work with him don't understand why he's trying to do all this stuff, and he's kind of like on a mission. And so even saying like they saw like the part that with the Bigfoot part just kind of threw him off, and he just couldn't take it, and he just kind of left. And then when he had his cousin talking about how you could tell he was just frustrated and disturbed, and he had this crazy laugh like yuck. I don't know how he was doing it. He was doing like yuck. Yeah. And his cousin trying to explain the laugh, and
perfect acting, and he did the look off, and he's like, I could have cried, like in that moment. That in itself was genius. Like, it was so many parts that was genius. Just having the idea of Brian McKnight was hanging out with him, and he's like, well, what you listening to right now?
Right.
And he's like, listening to Tevin Campbell. And I, in my mind, I always get logical, like as a former radio DJ, I'm like, why was Brian McKnight at a point where he would have been hanging out with anybody at that point? But I didn't get caught up on that.
Yeah.
But I was just like, just the idea that like he got fixated with Brian McKnight. Oh, but Tevin Campbell's got to be the person from there,
right?
And Brian McKnight's like, man, people around the office was calling him Kevin Campbell,
right?
Which happened in real life for a long time.
Right. So yeah, and then they showed the last footage of him.
Yeah.
And he's sitting there at the table. sitting down on the couch, and he's drinking, and he's, and his family's kind of talking about how he was kind of like breaking down a little bit, but like he's like, I gotta finish it. I don't know. And he's like, well, I don't know what he was concerned about. Answer me this: do you think that, I'm not gonna say the name of the company, but the company took him out because he ended up missing, and all you saw was like white gloves and these big flat shoes that Goofy that was in the lake, and his Chevy Impala. I think it was like something like a Chevy, some black car, but some Chevy Impala was found in the lake where he went fishing with his son. Stupid.
Which is hilarious, right? Because it's like, that was the part that brought us back to reality, because you watch this whole thing and you're like, oh crap, he's going crazy, because he did a good enough acting job where that seemed legit.
Yeah.
It didn't seem like, oh, he's acting about going crazy.
No,
like he was really going crazy. And so seeing the Goofy mitt and the big shoes, I was like, oh yeah, this is fake. It brought me back to, this isn't a real documentary.
Right.
I don't need to look up Thomas Washington, and again, I don't need to stop, and then I don't need to go watch the Goofy movie next, which I did. But you didn't have to go and watch, look it up. So yeah, like that was my theory, was like, oh yeah, the company definitely went ahead and took him out. If he wasn't gone, but he was already gone. He was already out of place. He didn't need. So like there's a few different fan theories that are being tossed out, and it got a lot to do with season 3. So I'm going to answer that question when we do a larger review.
Okay. Because
there is a theory that I kind of have with where he could potentially be, and have we seen him in other episodes?
Oh, wow.
Or is he exists in another space?
Because the first thing I thought is like, if they don't show the body, then it's a possibility. I'm giving, like comic book logic. And so I was kind of almost wondering too, it's like, is he going to show up later on the last episode or something? Like, why is the body missing? But I thought it was interesting with the gloves and all this other kind of stuff. But the way the whole thing was kind of played, it was, like I said, it just had so much stuff that was real, mixed in with absurdity, mixed with good acting, and the way it was shot, and the clips and stuff, and it tied in the craziness with the truth, and the lies were kind of tied in. And like I said, there were like I think the first black animator at Disney was Floyd Norman. he worked on stuff like The Jungle Book and stuff like that. And I think Ron Husband, the guy that I had met, I think he was like the second one, and he started like as an animator back in 1975, and he worked on like Little Mermaid and Lion King and stuff like that. And so, you know, like, I'm very curious on how they took, because the first thing I thought when I saw this episode, I was like, I'm gonna go on Facebook and see what Ron's up to and see if he makes a comment or if anybody brings up this episode of Atlanta and what will he have to say about it. Because I didn't want to do it what seemed like a jerk, but I was almost gonna be like, you remember me? I met you a few years ago. We had a good conversation. I saw this episode of you know, I was like, I wonder how much they borrowed, because like some of the stuff he had told me kind of matched up with some of the frustrations and stuff. And it was, you know, because one of the things he said I thought was very interesting is like, even though he found success in it, he was doing all these big hits back to back to back, and they still wouldn't, you know, they still kind of limit to where he was, even though he kept doing the stuff. And Disney changed and went to another level because of works from like him, you know, like he brought into a new era of movies. And when they kind of stopped using him, they kind of wasn't the same again. And so it's just amazing how, and I was saying this was, matter of fact, I was talking to you about this before, how a lot of times we may not create stuff, but our input and insight and talent makes that thing, it brings it to life. It brings it a swag, a breath that it didn't normally have. And a lot of times we're used like that, and people don't even know. And we're connecting to stuff for reasons that we don't know. And it might be because somebody who looks like you was behind it, and they just never got the credit, or you just never knew it like that. And you're like, why does this taste like, you know, my mama's cooking, and I'm in this, you know, whatever, this place where nobody looks like me is cooking, and you see the cook in the back, or the person who gave them the recipe was somebody who looked like you. And so this familiarity for strange things that's not of you is probably not as removed from you as you think. I'll say that.
Yeah. I would say for me, the final, I agree with everything you just said. And I think my final piece on this particular, I want to explain why I refer to this episode as brilliant. And it's because of layers. I think as a consumer of media, I enjoy layered episodes of things. You don't have to beat me over the head with it. You can just tell me what the problem is with your actions, which is typically how we experience a problem, is that it's a verb, you know, like it's happening to us. And so until it really, you can, you know, like a storyteller makes you feel as though you can be empathetic to the plot of plight of what's going on.
Right.
They drew us into themselves in a way through this Thomas Washington character that made me understand the journey of like a young man. Like, can you picture Thomas Washington gets accepted into Disney through a diversity program? You know, he did the work. So then you take Donald Glover, who gets picked out of a diversity program by Tina Fey to write on 30 Rock. And then he's instantly like catapulted into like Community, and then he's Donald Glover. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's put in a position so quickly because of people wanting to create diverse spaces. It's funny, we had the conversation about Tyler Perry and making a statement of the nature at the Toronto Film Festival of wanting to cultivate Black talent better so that they'll be more prepared for when they get certain opportunities. Right. You think about Donald Glover, who wasn't ever really cultivated by any like Black creator. He was just thrust into a position and has taken full advantage. And now he's in another space where it's like he could exit, and he did his part, and we should be good with him. If he wants to come back reincarnated as, you know, as like, we've seen him as Childish Gambino, we've seen him on television, we've seen him like as a star behind the lens also. So it's like, if he goes into movies next, I accept it, you know? Right. So like, watching this particular episode, it helped me like kind of tip my cap to Donald Glover's journey, and just say like, yeah, I empathize a little bit more with you. Like I now see you not just as, because sometimes one of the things we do in our community, and at least I've been guilty of, is thinking that people are being fake different. Like they're trying to be different and it ain't organic, it ain't natural. And now, like, with this particular episode, one of the layers that I appreciate is that, like, yo, you really gotta like appreciate some of these brothers who've overcome the hood, overcome corporate, and they're still trying to find themselves. So I really appreciated that. I definitely love the fact that it was shot perfectly like an actual documentary, which also could be spoofing the cut and paste way that we do documentaries.
Yeah.
But on the same token, it still took a lot of discipline to do all of those things the way that they did it so perfectly. And let's go back to where the original conversation started, by naming it The Goof That Sat by the Door. Yo, what more can you say about something with that complexity to enter into that it enters into that conversation by just the title.
Right.
And it gives us humor, it gives us everything that we need. So that's why I say, when it comes down to like top episodes of a television show that I've ever watched,
yeah,
I'm a little blind. I am man enough to admit that, maybe Penny, getting burned by her mom on Good Times was a better episode. But I ain't watched it in 10 years, maybe 15 years. James whooping the light-skinned kid on Good Times was another good episode. I don't think those episodes had depth and just memorable episodes for me. Right. Maybe what's his name? Different Strokes. The episode where the dude tries to molest Arnold.
Okay.
There's a lot of episodes that like impacted my life and like made me think like, yo, like. But this one, I would say as an adult, for what I can remember,
yeah,
this is a top 3.
Wow.
A certain episode, just episode of anything. And those are my reasons why. It's the layers. I just appreciate the layers. So that's my take on this very, very hilarious episode.
I love what you said about Donald, which is all true. I will add to that he inspired, Miles Morales. Miles Morales Spider-Man, because he used his platform, his face, his fame to say, hey, how come, Spider-Man can't be black? And I'm sure that's been said many times before, but for somebody like him to say that, and to get somebody's attention to, inspire the idea to make it become something that's like a beloved character now, it says a lot. I think his story in a way is almost kind of as well as like how Dave Chappelle kind of came up, where he got opportunities and they just kept taking chances with him and letting him through to the point where you wouldn't think that a steak that went through a meat grinder would still be a steak at the end. Because usually by the time you get down that grinder, you are unrecognizable. So to be a black person that's an artist, that has a different way of seeing things, and the machine is not necessarily looking like you or necessarily would normally let somebody who like you through, and for you to come in with you intact and then have a way to present you, after surviving the machine, and still have something to say and still have a voice through all that. That's a long journey to still have a voice and a perspective that is still relatable to the people that you necessarily even deal with or was necessarily on your journey with you. But you decide to still be like, I'm one of you, I'm still you. And this is what I have to say about this. It's amazing. Jordan Peele too. I would expect them kind of movies that he does and the social commentary that he does with where he came from, how he came through. Same thing with Donald. Same thing with Dave Chappelle. It's very interesting, but I think it's a beautiful thing. And I think all their art is tempered in a certain kind of way. And I think it's very rare and very hard. And I think that's why they're so special. The art and stuff that they give us and present us is so special, because it wasn't like like I said, it was almost like a coal that became a diamond. It would have to go through those pressures to be able to shine that bright. And I think it's a lot of folks who just don't make it through. There's no self to share at the end. And so for them to be like that, and he's definitely one of those folks. Who would have thought? It'd be like these folks, like I said, like you would think are, not about the culture or consider them acting white or whatever, or awkward and weird. They are saying our story and presenting us in ways that we've never seen, and it's still us. And it might not be the direction most of us would probably go about doing it, but they found a way and found a voice that connects, and that people could, all people could kind of digest and it's interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah. No, I agree. I definitely agree, man. Now, I think I'm gonna probably end up watching episode 5 again, and definitely watching episode 8 again for the third time. I know my son called me about episode 8 and was just like really ecstatic about it. I'm trying to get a good friend of mine, David Walker, who's written some really good books about Blaxploitation, and as well as done a documentary on it. I would love for him to watch that particular episode, but he's a creative himself, so he refuses to watch an episode out of order. I can't convince him. I'm like, it doesn't matter, you can watch. He's like, nope, I gotta watch it how they created it, because I don't want to miss a thing, because I bet it all makes sense. And I'm like, it may, but on the surface level. But I'm interested. I always tell people watch that episode. So like, and I would just definitely suggest, if you've watched it, I'll be interested in, seeing, if you get feedback and, what people think about the episode. I enjoy doing these episodes with you, man, because it's like just us talking. This is what we would have talked about. And I always learned something, like what you talked about, that nuanced layer of like what episode 5 meant to you. Oh, that got me to thinking, like, I'm going to watch episode 5 again with a whole different lens now.
Wow.
Because that blew my mind right there, to just think about it from that standpoint as a parent, like just losing your child to the game, which is, we do it on so many levels. The hood takes them, religion can take them, just family dynamics and politics.
Society, yeah.
Yeah, from the time our children are born, they're like being pulled from our clutches, and we're just always just running, just trying to get them back. Get them back on. And that, man, good episode.
So like your friend, I normally do not watch out of order, but with our discussions, and I trust your judgment, I went out of my character to watch the episodes, and I'm glad that I did. And because of that, we got these very, I think, insightful conversations about these very powerful episodes. So if folks seen the episodes before, would like to know what you think of the episodes as well, and also the kind of the stuff that we spoke about. And then for those who have not seen it, I suggest start from the beginning. Support this show. I think that Mr. Donald Glover is cashing in all his chips. He's about to cash out, and so he's betting big on the way out the door. So I think it makes for very interesting art, and so I'm glad to see it. So it's almost kind of like, I'm on my way out, so whatever I say and do, I'll be gone anyway. So I like art that is unrestricted and could take a chance like this, and I'm very, very interesting to see his takes on these things that I'm interested in. All right, so that was Jay and Drew, and that was our conversation about season 4 episode 5, and then also season 4 episode 8 of Atlanta. Until next time, peace. Thanks for listening, and please like and subscribe. Be sure to check out past and future episodes of this show, along with my other shows entitled The Movie Bench Quarterbacking Podcast and The J and Podcast, available now on all streaming platforms. Until next time, peace.